Welcome, I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and as we travel around the county and we get the opportunity to meet our department directors, our supervisors throughout our journey throughout the years, today we have the distinct pleasure. We've had him on before, Steve Martini, and thank you very much
Thank you
for being with us. You've got an awesome job being in charge of the 911 center, all the activity that goes into receiving those phone calls, dispatching the appropriate people and vehicles to the different scenes, and we want to spend some time on that because we're also at a milestone, 1 year into our, can I use the word conversion?
Sure, conversion, consolidation, unification, we use all three of those words.
So, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about Stephen and where Steve comes from, where Stephen comes from, whatever you prefer to go by. How'd you get started? Where'd you grow up? A little bit about your family. It's always interesting to note that, and people like to know who's running the different departments. So here's your opportunity.
Sure. Well, thank you. I come from a long history of government service. My dad was an air traffic controller with the FAA for 30 years, and I grew up out west. He's from northern Mississippi, but wound up out west, and I was born outside of Seattle and lived in Washington State for 12 years, and then near Salt Lake City for another 6 or 7 years, and came south for college to the University of Mississippi, and I stayed south because it doesn't snow down here, and I love it. Once I graduated from University of Mississippi, I actually wound up here in Williamson County working for the Review Appeal and the Brentwood Journal and the Journal of Thompson Station in Spring Hill.
I remember those days.
Right. For a few years, I was a newspaper reporter, and wound up in Chattanooga doing public safety communications. Just kind of as I was working in the reporting world, I was intrigued by the impact that folks had in public safety, and then especially public safety communications, and I thought it was an interesting career move. So I did, and after 10 years in Chattanooga, I had an opportunity to come back and work with the city of Brentwood for 3 years, and Chief Jeff Hughes, who was the public information officer up there when I was a reporter years ago.
And he's kind of changed roles in his
He has a few, right,
too.
as it's gone on, right.
Fine man.
And I came and joined Williamson County to work at your pleasure, sir, and I appreciate that, about 1.5 years ago.
So I also know along the way, you found a wonderful, sweet bride.
Oh, she's amazing. She's my better half. She's smarter than I am, and I do what she tells me. Right.
You're a smart man for acknowledging that.
17 years of marriage and two strong boys. I got a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old in Williamson County Schools down there in Spring Hill, and we're happy as we can be.
I don't know that I've ever met your boys, but I have been introduced to your wife, and my prayers go out to her for having to deal with you in the schedule that you work, I promise.
Right.
So let's go up at about 40,000 feet and to kind of explain the whole concept of 911.
Sure.
We have a 911 center in Brentwood.
We do.
And just within the last year, as we said, we consolidated the Franklin and the Williamson County 911 centers. When a phone call comes in, kind of talk to the people about that, how that works.
Sure.
When they dial in on their landline, if we still have people that own landlines, or in on your cell phone.
Sure. We have a few, and then there's a third version, which is your VoIP, Vonage, Magic Jack type internet phone. Those are the three primary methods we receive phone calls from. The landline is your traditional method. We've been receiving phone calls from landlines since the late 60s. And you pick up the phone in your house that's plugged into the jack on your wall, and when it rings to the 911, the address of your home shows up on a computer screen we have there with your phone number, and it makes it makes the work real easy to figure out where the call needs to go, for the most part, unless you're calling for a neighbor or a house fire across the street or something. We know where you're at. About 85% of our calls are not those landline calls now. They're either cell phone calls or those voice over internet calls, the Vonage or Magic Jack type calls. Cell phone calls, when you call in, it gives us the address of the cell phone tower you're broadcasting off of, which may not be the tower closest to you. If the tower closest to you is busy, you're going to bounce to the next closest or the next closest, so we could be 1.5 miles away from where you really are, which makes it really tricky if you live in Fairview or Brentwood or Nolensville and you're right there on a county line, the tower you broadcast stuff of may be actually in Rutherford County or Davidson County or somewhere else. So you may wind up speaking to a 911 center that's not us and be transferred back into our area. And those internet-based phone lines, really interesting, honestly. A lot of businesses are moving to those. It's just cheaper. You can keep the billing address associated with the main office and then have satellite offices around anywhere, warehouses space or whatever. And then you pick up the phone and call, and it's going to broadcast that billing address of wherever that the phone bill is going to. May not be the location. We had a medical call received in the last couple of weeks from Memphis, in a warehouse in Memphis, that the company rented just server space here in Williamson County to process their phone calls. So their phone call came to us, but the ambulance needed to go to a warehouse in downtown Memphis, which was a creative challenge, but not an unknown challenge. We expected it and know how to play those.
So let me ask you, as I sit here and I'm approaching those twilight years, I'm not, in a baseball term, I'm approaching third base, but I'm not rounded third base heading home yet. And you hear this discussion when you talk about this high percentage of phone calls that come into our center, either from the computer base, the voice over, and I don't have that down to the perfect wordage, or a cell phone. I imagine the majority of them are cell phones.
Yeah, 78%.
So most of our phones have a GPS system.
They do.
And it begs the question to ask. I still have a landline at my house that I left it there in the twilight years of my mom several years ago, who was in good health, but I felt more secure with her living with me in the event that she needed emergency medical treatment in that period of time that I was away at work or away from the house. Should we be promoting more of the landlines? I'm not trying to promote one carrier over another or get into that philosophical war or whatever it is, but there's no question the landline is the quickest response time for our teams.
Yeah, landline phone is going to go direct to our 911 center, the right 911 center that serves your address, and it's going to come with the address of where you're calling from. The two scenarios, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here, I don't have a landline in my home.
Right.
But I have a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old who both, if they call 911, know our address and know where we are. If you have someone in your home who's elderly, who may not be able to speak if they called, or who may have, who may just be barely picking up the phone and making the call is a success. Or if you have young children, that picking up the phone and making the call is a success, but if they were to get somebody, they may not know addresses and whatnot, landlines would be a great option.
So I would encourage people, first of all, if you do have small children, and as early as you feel comfortable letting your children know the exact address of where you live, to teach them that.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes we, as parents and grandparents, we may not always be able to do that with children that are 3, 4, and 5. But with technology and the children, I watch my grandchildren get on a laptop or some of the gadgets that they've got. They're pretty savvy, and so they're savvy enough to probably know exactly where they are at, particularly their home.
Right.
But I would encourage people to do that without pushing one product out over another, because you're correct. At the end of the day, it's so much cheaper in the computer world.
Sure.
Even the cell phones that we have now, we use the phones to talk, but we use our phones for many, many other things. It becomes a walking computer for us oftentimes.
Right. Well, you mentioned that difference. Since midsummer of this year, we've rolled out a product. I think we're the only ones doing this in the state of Tennessee currently. It's enhanced abandoned functionality, which if somebody were to call 911 on their cell phone and they hang up in the first ring, it was an accidental, and we have a lot of this in cell phones that mashes up against something in your purse or your pocket, so we get an accidental dial to 911. You realize that you hang up and you never really spoke to anybody. We'll push a text message out to that device, advising that person their device called 911 and asking if they have an emergency. And if they reply no, that call is cleared from our system without requiring a phone call back. It's all by text, and if they reply yes, it generates a text message into the center and it generates a text conversation with one of the telecommunicators at the console to figure out where they are and what's going on.
Let me talk about the difference between a 911 call and a phone call that probably should be made on a different phone number.
Oh, indeed. Anything in progress, give us a call. Anything that's not in progress needs to go to one of those 10-digit numbers.
And you're going to have to define what in progress.
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
you're using a military term
I'm sorry, right. When we talk about in progress is if somebody's outside your house and they're shaking the windows and the doors trying to break in, we want a 911 phone call. If you came home after being gone for vacation for 3 weeks and you see that your front door was unlocked or somebody broke through a window, we want, I gave a bad example. Because if we get there and you haven't been inside that house, we want to treat it as though maybe somebody's inside. But if you've gone inside, there's nobody there, we've confirmed this, or better yet, you get home and the lawnmower from the backyard is missing, call on that 10-digit number. It's not something we're going to send responders, lights and sirens across the county for. It's delayed. It was yesterday. If you are having chest pains that feel like a heart attack, call that 911. If your foot kind of bothers you and it's been bothering you for 3 weeks and you need an ambulance, call the 10-digit number.
So let's talk a little bit about when a phone call comes in. And you might need to get into the weeds a little bit here, but the new public safety building that we have off on Beasley Drive is as high-tech of a building of anything that I know of in Williamson County. And I would even say that over the commercial enterprises that had a very sophisticated computer system. The system that is in there was put together by a lot of gifted minds and a lot of gifted individuals that put a lot of energy and time into that, and that included you and your involvement in it. I know you weren't there on the front end when we were developing it, but you soon came on board, and actually one of the things you brought to the table is you had a merger conversion of a couple of cities, couple of units, not only in your Chattanooga lifestyle, but had done an excellent job in the Brentwood area. But a phone call comes in, and it comes in from XYZ. How do we know there's an ambulance in the area? How do we know that which law enforcement body to dispense of that? Kind of get into the weeds a little bit about the center itself to make us as taxpayers feel comfortable about that.
Sure. Well, the process for identifying the location of a caller and to get the right resources to the right place at the right time, which is the only game we're in my room, is right folks to the right place at the right time. Is you call from your home or from your cell phone or whatever. When we get that cell phone call, you do have the latitude and longitude coordinates of the caller pretty close to accurate. And when we test those time and time again, we had a medical call in the General George area to the Brentwood Point apartments. The caller didn't know where they were. Using those latitude longitude coordinates, we put them right next door in those townhouses. So that's great. And most of the time we see that.
And that's done within seconds.
Oh, absolutely, right. As soon as the phone call is answered, that plots to a map that's on our screen. We have a list of the calls that are active and a map that's handling the call that you're on right now. It tells you exactly where that caller is, or really, really close, which is great. So if you don't know your address and you're calling from a cell phone, if you can give us landmarks, kind of what's close to you, we can compare that to what we're seeing on our map and get addresses that match. And especially if you're calling for something that's outside or a fire or something that can be easily seen, we're going to dispatch to the area and the responders will hone that down. Once we have your address inside of our computer system, we have all those addresses linked up to various response areas around the county. And depending on where you are and what you need, there are layers of response plans basically that say we'll need law enforcement and fire and EMS, but not just law enforcement, fire, and EMS. We're going to dig into how many law enforcement officers, which type of fire apparatus do we need, how many medical units might we send. I'm going to take this moment to really brag on our database specialist, Kathy Burrage. She is phenomenal. She spends her time at the computer every day configuring and working with our response agency partners to program those responses so the dispatcher doesn't have to think about that. They're just clicking the button, finding the address, and then relying on what we've pre-planned into the computer system to go to any variety of response types. And as you might imagine, I have the chance to work with Mac Purdy, so we dig into the weeds on a variety of different types of emergencies that may exist or may come up. So we plan to the 14th and 15th and 16th level when we're talking about what we might send to what scenario. So it really is just a button click to tell us who was recommended from the department and then what type of resources and how many from that department. And we really shoot for 60-second to 90-second dispatch times on nearly all fire, medical, and law enforcement in progress kind of priority calls. Those that you would think of on if somebody's, again, shaking your door trying to get in your house, or you're having a stroke or a seizure, those types of calls. You say, I need somebody right now. We want those into our house and out the door in less than a minute and a half at the most.
Well, and it's so important when you think about an individual with a heart attack or stroke, car wreck, slip and fall. It could be a variety of things. We know, if you watch sports at all, there are protocols now for football on concussions, and all of us can hit our head, or
Sure.
in any. There's always an accident that can occur. Do you have a rough idea about how many calls we will receive into the 911 center on an annual basis?
We receive around 7,000 calls a month, so that's 90,000 a year.
90,000 a year. And you figure that we've got about 220,000 people that live in our communities, all of Williamson County, and you're approaching nearly 50% of the people using the phone base. Now, a lot of those would be repeat phone calls. We do have people that may be at home alone or slip and fall, and so a lot of those calls are for items like that. Because when you receive a call, when it's made into our center at the 911 center, it's easy to determine if it's an emergency within just a matter of seconds.
Pretty immediately, that's correct. The two examples that, and hopefully I'm not giving any ideas to how to prank 911 calls successfully, but when I was the dispatcher at the console, which is where I started years ago, those calls that are already occurring when you answer 911, they're in the middle of it. Sure. They're already occurring. You don't have to say hello. And those folks who are pretending to have an emergency would usually wait for me to get my greeting out and then start their emergency, which I thought was very polite, as opposed to just having their emergency where it was. Yeah, you can tell whether there's an issue or not.
I know you're proud of the last year.
Absolutely.
A lot of work.
Proud of the folks over there, for sure.
Without question. The people make your job a lot easier. Not that you won't get gray hairs from taking care of all of it, but I know you're very proud. Let's talk about this merger that occurred. It's not gone totally seamless, but it's pretty close.
Sure. It's pretty smooth. And we expected when I took this job in June of 16, when we really talked about what a consolidation would look like. And if you talk to any of my folks, they'll roll their eyes and go, "Oh, here it comes," the same phrase I've been saying every 2 weeks for a year and a half, which is we were really working toward 2 years to stability, moving into a new facility with a new computer system, new phone system, new radio system, and I'm not complaining at all. All the different access to all the different resources we have now is great, but it took a lot of learning, and a lot of variety of folks across the country would say in the 911 profession, pick one of those three things to change and give folks a chance to acclimate to it. We changed a lot of it, really all of it. So it took us a little bit as a team working together to learn the new technology and learn each other, learn the new operational procedures of how the other, the city of Franklin used to do things, or the county used to do things, and gathering those things together. Really, the people has been the easiest part of this transition. The folks from both sides have really merged together quickly and bonded and seen each other as teammates and relied on each other as teammates, which has made this whole thing really smooth. So we're through that first year, and we're not trying to figure out how to make sure all the computer parts work and all the buttons are, and where we might sit. And now we're really getting into the weeds of maybe this police department does things this way, and maybe this police department does things just slightly different. What are some of the things we can do inside the room that don't change operational practices for the departments, but can streamline how we do things internally, which is really great. We had about a 2-hour arm wrestling meeting on Wednesday, me and my leadership team, of really just taking all those things, pouring them out on the table, and going through them one by one to figure out what. And it was great. Everybody walked out of there saying, "We're making progress."
It's the only way you find solutions is
Absolutely.
try to hit them head on and work through them. It's,
Sure.
We were talking before the show went over. One of the cast members here has just recently got married, and it's a struggle
Yeah.
this first year,
Yeah.
those first few months,
Yeah.
liking, disliking a lot
Sure.
of the things, and the only way to do it is lay it out there,
Sure.
have that discussion, and find a solution, and
Yep.
work for the betterment of that organization. 911 Center, you've alluded to it, I've touched on it, it just cannot function without people, and you're always needing good people.
Right. We just offered 5 positions to fill our last 5 vacancies to become fully staffed last Tuesday, and have all of those accepted, and they're all going through the last part of the pre-employment process. We hope to have them come join us in early 2018, which is exciting. We've brought 20 new team members to the group since I came on in June of last year, which is mostly previous vacancies. We had a few folks, which is expected as part of a consolidation, had a few folks that decided they liked what it used to be and weren't exactly thrilled where it was going, and that's fine, and they've sought other opportunities, and we've high-fived them as they went and found the thing that was really drawing them to their calling.
Well, the 911 Center, Stephen, is a center that's open 365, 24
Yeah.
hours a day.
Yep.
Christmas, here we are in this holiday period of time, New Year's. The operation never shuts down.
Right.
It can't shut down.
Right.
And so that's a challenge on employees.
Sure.
And you've got some long-term employees, don't get me wrong,
Definitely.
20-plus years and
Yep.
more, that have found that type of work as their career.
Yep.
And you have to have a passion for it. You have to love what you're doing to put that kind of time and commitment into it. But things do change in your organization.
Sure, absolutely. Things change across. We found when you're talking about those long-term, we changed our hiring process of all. We really haven't lost. Let's see, we've lost 2 of the 20 that we've hired since last summer. One for failure to complete the training program, and the other he was in a different role, customer service, and he liked the opportunity to spend some time on the phone and really talk to people. And in our world, we just don't have that time on the phone to give.
Not when you're doing $7,000 a month.
Right on and right off. So it just wasn't for him. But otherwise, the 18 out of 20 we've had come and stay, and I really credit that to that pre-hire process where we talk about in plain fashion. This is a job that requires commitment from not just you, but from your family. They need to know that when there's lousy weather outside and the tornado's coming, you're going to get in the car and come here. You know, when the snow's falling down and we're telling everybody to stay off the roads, they're going to get in their car and drive to the center.
Right. Let's talk about the employment opportunities. I know you can never have enough people in your portfolio of future employees because things happen.
Sure.
Careers change, but people move also. Yep. How do they get a hold of you? What's the process? Phone number, email address?
Sure.
That people can reach out to you.
Sure. To reach me, I'm at 615-721-3030, 721-3030. And when folks give me a call, that'd probably be the best way to reach me. There's opportunities always. We probably will hire, I'm assuming, 1 academy of 5 every year going forward. And that's, there's some folks that are eligible to retire in the next couple of years or even now. Eventually they're going to do that. So we're going to want to look to replace those folks. When they retire out, we want to find opportunities to hire within for those folks for supervisory positions or other roles. So we'll make some internal promotions, and we'll always have those opening kind of first steps as a telecommunicator.
We got about 4 minutes left in our telecast, and I'm sure there's something that I've overlooked that you wanted to get that message out. something that you're proud of. I mean, I know you're proud of your team. I know you're proud of the operation, and you should be. And our citizens that live in Williamson County should feel very safe and secure with you at the helm of the ship. But if there's something that I've overlooked, throw it out on the table now.
No problem. The only thing that I would stress is that it just certainly is not just me, and nobody's under the impression that it is. But just have a great team of supervisors and an administrative support staff that handling our new hire and continuing education for training for all of our folks to be aware of not just what they need to do today, but some of the things that are coming down the pipe, whether it's maneuvering text to 911 or whatever else we're learning to do that's in the future. And then those supervisors that are handling those day-to-day shifts
Yes.
that are there. You know, as a supervisor, you promote up into this position for a little extra pay, and then you wind up on the bottom of the seniority poll for holidays again. But where you said, well, man, if I'd have just stayed a dispatcher, I could have Christmas off because not anymore because you got to be here, and they're dedicated, they're committed.
I've got to tell you the story a couple of months ago now. I was down there having a meeting and kind of taking the physical tour of the facility, which we encourage people, if they'd like to do that, contact me, see the whole facility, see the whole layout of what's going on down in what we refer to oftentimes as our war room. It's not really that, but it's a bunker type facility. But as we were walking around the room, one of the gentlemen stepped up and said he had just had a 911 call that came to the dispatcher of, I think he said a family member, but it may have been a friend, and wondered if that person was on duty. So we did some quick checking, and then sure enough they were. And he wanted to thank them for their ability to stay calm, cool, and collected, as we hear kind of the Boy Scout, Girl Scout motto, and be able to get help out to this individual. And I think sometimes that we fail to really recognize the importance of every one of those 7,000 calls. Even if 10% of them are just, I'm sorry,
Sure.
I didn't mean to call you. That's still 6,000 calls a month rolling in there, or approximately. And those calls are important.
Right.
They're so critical to that person laying in the floor with the cut, the fire, whatever, all the time. And so hats off to your people.
Well, thank you. They're doing a great job. I appreciate that.
Got 1 minute. I do want to say that as we go down the future, our community and the 911 center, particularly, and the technology that we have got before us will change. And a lot of those things are behind the scenes that I call them consumers, the taxpayers, just don't know anything about that, including me oftentimes. But we've invested a lot of money in our 911 center and the technology, and the other operations are down there, from the ham operators. As primitive as that is of what you do, they're still needed.
Critical.
We need volunteers. They're critical to the overall security and safety and operation of Williamson County. So if you're watching this show and you want to be a part of that, feel free to jump in and call us and let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're in good hands with this man, I promise you. He's one hard-working, dedicated servant to our community, and I thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Have a good day. I'm Rogers Anderson.
Daisy Field by Susie Sims Irwin. Daisies wilt a little each day when there's nothing left for them to say. When they have tickled bellies of newborn calves and beckoned lovers along garden paths, hidden in corners behind tall grass, raced up to the highway to feel cars whiz past, preen reflections in the creek, taking sun and rain, bloom past their peak. Then daisies were whirled a little each day when there is nothing for them to say. Theirs is a small life, in a large field they grow. It is the same with daisies and most people that I know.